handing over U.S. supremacy when it comes to space exploration back to the Russians.
Russia is doing it in interim. Of course, Boeing is going to come out with it. And you remember the Virgin guy, Mr. Branson?
Yeah, well,
he has a company that is going to go into it. But PayPal founder, Elon Musk, has a company called SpaceX. So all of the private companies are now coming up and say, Mr. Government, you don't need to have that program. We take it on our shoulders, and we are going to go and do research into space.
I don't know. I guess it's good in the sense that the private sector is doing what the public sector can't. You know, the government certainly in this economic time going to invest in something as esoteric to most Americans as space technology, right?
Yeah.
You need to create jobs first before you worry about space technology. But it is kind of a sad thing to see that so much of what we used to call the United States leader, the global power, we're not even in the space arena anymore.
That's right. But at the same token, I want to tell you, I was listening to Mario Gabelli. He's one of those investors who makes a lot of money for his fellow investors. He's the one who was talking about, you know, he says China, India, and the others, there are no private planes. There are no private aviation all set up. In America, and in Europe, there are just so many private jets, much more than commercial jets. And he feels that if China decides to unlock that, then and only then the manufacturers of the parts that are here in the United States are going to start moving. I mean, they're going to get orders and others. So when India and China open up the private aviation, that's when that middle class here is really going to see a jump.
Folks, a few weeks ago, we did a fun story on finishing schools. You know, India's coming up with this idea of finishing schools for boys to groom them into men.
Yeah.
Finishing schools, though, have often been associated with the country of Switzerland, right?
Yes.
Because that's where you went. You went to Switzerland to get trained in the culinary arts or how to be a good hostess.
That's right.
The problem is, over the last couple of decades, with the economy the way it is, these finishing schools haven't done well at all. And most of them have died out, except for one. The Institut Via Pierre-Feu, I hope I'm saying that right, but it's IVP for short. IVP is still thriving in Switzerland as a finishing school. And in fact, it's not cheap. You will spend $20,000 to attend a 6-week course there. And it's no joke either, folks. You have 45 exams and daily practice for students on how to be a proper host.
Yes.
And that doesn't just mean sitting at the table and getting your plates and forks and knives correct. It actually means some of these people will be in the role of servant. So in this school, you actually have play acting and role playing, and you play both sides. You play the server and the person who is being served, which I thought was very, very interesting. But here's the part of the story that I really liked. You know, for so long, these schools catered to the European blue bloods, right? The ones that were really the upper crust.
Yes.
Well, this school survived because it changed its strategy. It started to recruit people and students from all over the world.
China.
And China and India among them, because it recognized very early that the new millionaires in the world weren't in Europe. They were in the east part of the world.
That's right.
You know, because of their change, they now draw mid-career executives to enroll at IVP, where they hope to gain an edge with international clients. Younger students come to prepare for careers in public relations and foreign service. Princesses and daughters of presidents and prime ministers enroll to better perform in their duties.
Wow.
And you have dignitaries that come so that they understand what kind of gifts are appropriate for these different countries that they're in.
So these are not kids. These are like adults.
These are adults. And so far, it's listed 36 women that range from the age 18 to 46, hailing from 14 different countries, including Syria, Thailand, India, and the U.S., given their high-profile backgrounds. Of course, when you're in these schools, you're not allowed to discuss your last name. So nobody knows who you are and why you're there. But I thought that this was a very practical way of finishing schools to find a way to survive by courting an international audience and getting away from sort of that European concept of what a finishing school is.
Folks, you know, mortgage industry has been really morebound, particularly the foreclosures on people. They're in a slow motion. The government has decided that they really want to help them, and they can only help a few. So they got a long line of these people that actually make their payments, but their houses are not worth.
They're underwater.
They're underwater. So government keeps thinking, how do we help them? How do we help them? So finally they have come up with an idea, but I don't know how successful they will be. You've heard of 80% mortgages. Now government thinks, how about if we give these fellows 125% mortgage? I mean, whatever the house is worth, give them 25% more. Because these people have shown that they can actually pay the mortgage, you know. So if you give them 124 and take them down from 8% to 4% mortgage, they will stay in the house, they'll take care of it, and that's how the economy grows.
I don't see the harm in this kind of a policy. The problem is that it's not going to do anything but basically scratch the surface of the problem.
That is true. But second thing, many of the people, you know, you listen to CNBC, there are a lot of wise, intelligent folks that come on the air, and one of the things they always say is, why is government trying to interfere? Why not just leave it alone, let the foreclosures take place, let's just clean it out as quickly as possible, and then the world will again blossom. Right now, you have one of those limbo things that keep going. It's been going on for 3 years, and they feel the time to just cut the cord and say, done.
Because it's disproportionate, and that's why. Where this hurts Americans is in the middle class, the same middle class we just talked about earlier in the program. They're the ones that have the largest consumer power base when it comes to purchasing power. And yet, if you enact that kind of a policy, so many Americans who are in that very difficult circumstance will be basically completely out of participating in the economy at all. You'll create a bigger headache to deal with fleshing all of that out. It's easy for people who are in high and well-to-do circumstances to make that kind of a suggestion because none of the impact falls upon them.
But there are some very honest people out there. They don't want to have the bankruptcy on their shoulders. They don't want to be stamped that this person went bankrupt. They don't want to move away from the house. They're just attached to it.
That's right. And this is where the 99% and the 1% really start to matter, because they got into this circumstance because banks created the circumstance. The mortgage industry created the circumstance.
Expectation that the house will always go up.
Not only that, but they got people into houses they couldn't